Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
So Panthea is going to tell us a story, a very local story about an example, a really great example about their work. The story starts in New York, but it's going to take us back to around the world.
Thank you.
Thanks, Panthea.
Sorry, I didn't realize the 3 words I was supposed to give had to relate to my story, so they're probably less relevant.
Do you want to stand up?
Huh?
You want to stand up, or?
Can folks see me? Okay. Great. So we're at this conference. We've made great strides in open government, in civic technology, in data-driven policy making. I think folks here have made significant contributions in this field. But as we know, many people, thank you. But as we know, many people, even here, right here in New York, often live under the radar, live off the grid. And the issues of access go beyond just digital divide. As a designer working on governance and development issues, fields where economists often eat anthropologists for lunch, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. And in the era of big data, if McKinsey says so, it must be true, as we become increasingly reliant on capital D data, I've been thinking about what might exist in the negative space. Who are we not capturing in our data sets, and how might we serve them? So a few months ago, I met a young woman from Benin. I will call her Fatou. That's not her real name. She was adopted by an American preacher who had gone to Benin and had brought her back. Her family had been really excited. She finally had a chance at the American dream. So she moved in with her new father and mother in Queens, and she felt very taken care of. She was very happy to be here, and they started her on English lessons, and she was going to be able to enroll in school, something that had been a long-time dream for her. But even at the outset, some things seemed strange. So whenever they left the house, her mother would hold her by the wrist, keeping a firm grip. And she said that was to keep her safe. She was not allowed to have any possessions other than her clothing, and all her materials were regularly searched for any, particularly any information she might have, any pamphlets or any materials, and if those were found, they were confiscated. She started working at a school that the family owned in Manhattan, working really long hours, and when she asked about her own education, something that had been promised, she was told that she was being ungrateful and that she should stop asking. At first, she thought these were more just U.S. customs, maybe something that she would have to get used to. But then things started getting worse. The preacher started doing bad things to her at night, things that she still struggles to talk about today. And sorry. And so her visa expired. Her visa expired, and she wasn't allowed to get a new one. She wasn't allowed to get a new one, and so she was an undocumented alien now, something that she was told repeatedly that the U.S. government does not look on kindly.
Put your mic closer to your mouth.
Yeah, sorry. Something that the U.S. government doesn't look upon kindly. So Fatou was a victim of human trafficking, and she's not alone. There's 300,000 to 1 million trafficked persons here in the United States. New York City itself is a hub of human trafficking. And throughout her trafficking ordeal, which lasted 3 years, Fatou tried to get out several times. She was scared, she was confused, she didn't know what she could do and who she could turn to. And her trust had been betrayed, so who could she trust again? And so the question for our organization, and we're working with an amazing victims assistance organization here in New York, was how do we reach someone like Fatou, and how do we help someone like her? And the answers aren't always so clear. The same tools that we use to make our lives easier day to day often actually have unintended consequences for someone in her position. So services like Hopstop, like Google Maps, help us get to meetings on time, help us plan our commutes, plan our days. Fatu's traffickers used these tools to make sure that she would get home at exactly the time she was supposed to from work, otherwise there would be consequences. We're accustomed to cheap and easy communication around the world. You know, being in touch with family and friends has never been easier. For Fatu, this caused a lot of stress. Her family in Benin wondered why she never wanted to talk to them. We want to see you, they would say. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but she always had to make excuses for why she didn't want to talk and why, despite the ease of connection in the modern day, she wanted instead to disconnect. And while many of us are working on streamlining and improving civic service delivery, standardizing data formats, making sure they're accessible across platforms and agencies, the thought of linked data was terrifying to Fatu. As an undocumented person, she thought that one look at her papers, and any of her papers, would mean that it was all over. Would she go to jail? Would she be sent back home disgraced? And so this meant that whether she, when she was sick, she wouldn't go to the doctor. When she saw a police officer on the street, she would cross to the other side. And as we try and make our world more connected and efficient, this was actually something that was terrifying to someone in her position. And so, oh, sorry. Can you? So to reach someone like Fatu, we needed to think of other ways, other approaches, and we needed things that were accessible, trusted, appropriate, and relevant. Attributes not unlike what we'd use to describe services that we ourselves want to use. And so it's a long story of how we got here, and I'd be happy to talk about that further, but we settled on check cashing shops. Now, despite what we might think about check cashing shops, and Bing, you see what I did there, thinks, users of Bing think of them in certain ways.
Good job. We love Bing.
Of course. And so for people like Fatu, check cashing shops are accessible. Across all the trafficked persons that we talked to, these were actually a place that they could go to. Even when their movements were tightly controlled, traffickers realized that they needed to let their victims, the people that they controlled, send money home to their families or to pay off their debts. Sometimes their debts were as a result of coming to the US. And they were trusted. These were actually community gathering hubs. We spent a lot of time there watching people. A lot of financial institutions don't look too kindly upon certain segments of the population, and they will let them know that. This was a place where they were welcomed. Service was good to them, and so people hung out here. So that was the platform we decided to use, but what about the tool? It was going to have to be appropriate. So many outreach materials and many campaigns for victims of trafficking use images of chains, sad people, battered women, bruised women. But one woman told us, "My life is sad enough. I don't want sad pictures. I want facts. I want words. Tell me what my rights are." So images like this did not go over very well. And we spent a lot of time talking to people, and we realized that the term trafficking actually didn't register. Trafficking was something that happened to other people. It was something that happened to stupid people. And even if the term did register for them. And so we spent more time with folks trying to test different words, different language, often in sort of a Mad Lib style. And we found out what did register, which was passports. Most trafficked persons had had their passports taken from them, and it was a means of control, and it was something that they obviously wanted back, more so than getting out of trafficking. And so, we spent a fair amount of time sort of in check cashing shops thinking about what the places where they would have a bit of privacy were, where they would be able to interact while someone sort of may have waited for them by the entry. And we saw, these little boxes sort of being used for handing out different types of materials. So we started prototyping and testing with different folks materials that we made ourselves, and we started sort of testing the language, the size, and we developed different cards. They can, even if your materials are searched, you, for example, can have Metro cards, and so things that fit and could slide back. And so this was a really exciting program that we worked on here with Safe Horizon is the organization, and they're wonderful. And so now they're working with a range of independent check cashing shops in a couple of different boroughs in New York. So, that's my story. I think as humans, we are biased towards looking for information in places where they're easy to find and easy to work with. So nowadays, that largely means digital and online, or we tend to get information from familiar sources and people. But I hope we can sort of consider what we might lose in the process. And I think as many of us are working to build a more open and connected and efficient world, to think about people like Fatu and think about how we might integrate folks like that into our research and design and planning processes and better serve them. Thank you.
Thank you, Panthea. We're actually running out of time and lunch is here, but I think it's, if everyone can, I know we have lots of questions for each person. If you can ask them individually during lunch, that'd be great. But thank you so much for all of the talks, and Panthea, you really brought it home to New York, so thank you for that. Thanks.